I had just finished unloading the last of the oxygenated barrels into the small pond on my property when it happened. The unmistakable clatter of high heels striking gravel made me pause. I didn't even have to glance over my shoulder. That voice could break glass. What is this aquatic nonsense? It was Karen, the HOA president. Platinum bob perfectly aligned, pastel pink blouse crisp, clipboard seemingly fused to her arm. "These," I said calmly, gesturing to the water, "are tilapia. They're going into the pond I dug 6 months ago, entirely on my side of the property line." Karen gasped as if I'd poured acid into the community pool. "You can't bring fish into our neighborhood. This violates at least 7 HOA regulations. Are they invasive? Diseased? What if they migrate into our water?" I blinked. "Your water?" Karen huffed, indignant. "The HOA owns all shared water rights, including underground reserves. You can't just start stocking a private fishery next to our aquifer." "Actually," I said, opening the folder Melissa had just brought from the house, "you might want to read this deed. This entire section plot B through D, groundwater access included, was exempt from HOA acquisition in 1989. I purchased it 6 years ago." She snatched the paper from my hands like a toddler grabbing candy. Her eyes widened. For once, Karen had no words, so naturally, she did what she always did. Called the cops. 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled up. Blue and red lights danced across the pond's still surface as one officer stepped out, rubbing the bridge of his nose, exhaling as if he'd faced this kind of situation before. Karen pointed dramatically at the pond. "Arrest him for ecological terrorism. He's dumping foreign fish into our water. This could impact sprinkler systems and property values." The officer looked at me. I handed him the deed. He scanned it, then turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, this pond is on his property. The water is his too. There's no violation here." Karen's face turned crimson. "Then I want to file a formal HOA violation." "Ma'am, that's not something we handle. Maybe take it up with your HOA board." Karen growled. "I am the HOA board." The officers left, shaking their heads. Karen stormed off, phone out, muttering threats of escalation. Melissa nudged me. "You told her about the well yet?" I smiled. "Not yet. She's going to love that surprise." Because what Karen didn't realize was this. The HOA's water supply ran directly through my land, and I controlled the valve. The next morning, Karen returned this time with reinforcements. 2 other board members trailed her like ducklings, clipboards in hand, scanning my property as though about to audit NASA. One of them, a Weasley fellow named Frank, had once threatened to report me for painting my barn too rustic. Karen strutted toward the pond as if it were hers. "We're here to conduct an environmental assessment," she barked. "Code Section 4B7 grants us authority to inspect suspicious water modifications." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean a pond?" Frank clicked his pen. "You're diverting water. This may be an illegal use of the HOA's shared groundwater. If supply or pressure is affected, it's a civil infraction." Melissa came out, sipping her coffee like she was in a movie. "Tell them, honey." I pointed to the small metal hatch at the edge of my property. "See that? That's the central access to the HOA's main water line. It runs from a spring entirely on my land. That valve controls the flow into your community's reservoir." Frank blinked. "Wait, what?" Karen's face twitched. "You're lying." I walked over, flipped open the hatch, and turned the industrial valve a quarter turn. Within minutes, the HOA community sprinklers across the fields sputtered and stopped. Melissa chuckled. "Oops, must be a water pressure issue." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't, that's illegal." I handed her the deed, bookmarked. "Not only is it legal, Karen, but the HOA had a 20-year usage agreement with the previous owner. That agreement expired last spring. Nobody renewed it. I've just been generous until now." Frank went pale. "So, the entire HOA's water is under your control?" "Not control," I smiled. "Logic. You want to threaten me over a pond full of tilapia? Fine. But I suggest the HOA board start treating me like a neighbor instead of a criminal." Karen took a deep breath, hissing through her teeth. "This is blackmail." "It's property rights," I said calmly. "You've been using water that isn't yours. No charges yet." She spun on her heels and left with her little brigade, barking into their phones. That night, I received an email from the HOA's attorney requesting a friendly negotiation over shared water access. I didn't reply. What Karen didn't understand was that this wasn't about fish. It was about respect, boundaries, and making sure people like her knew where the line ran, and I owned the valve that drew it. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with 6 missed calls from unknown numbers, all within an hour. By noon, my inbox was flooded with desperate messages from HOA board members, lawn contractors, and even the local landscaping company, without permission to access the spring. The HOA's irrigation system was failing. Front lawns across the community were turning brown. Flowers Karen had personally ordered for the welcome gate wilted into mulch. Members proud of picture-perfect landscaping faced brown patches, dead turf, and complaints from realtors claiming the neighborhood was losing its visual appeal. And I hadn't touched the valve again. That single quarter turn had exposed just how vulnerable they were. I wasn't trying to play God. I just wanted them off my back. But Karen? She was doubling down. That evening, I saw her pacing along the sidewalk near my fence, Bluetooth earpiece blinking furiously. I couldn't hear her words, but her flailing arms spoke volumes. Then the certified letter arrived. The HOA was formally demanding immediate restoration of historical water flow access, or face legal action for disrupting essential utilities. Melissa laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. They're threatening you with legal action on your own water. I read the letter again, shook my head, and started drafting my reply. It was brief. To whom it may concern, access to the spring requires a renewed usage agreement and lease. Terms are negotiable. If no agreement is reached by Friday at 5:00 p.m., the HOA will need to seek alternative water sources. Sincerely, landowner. At 4:57 p.m. on Friday, Karen herself appeared at the edge of my driveway, accompanied by a man in a suit. He introduced himself as Mr. Halpern, HOA legal counsel, polite, cautious, and clearly nervous. "We understand there's been some tension," he said. "I'd like to propose a revised agreement." Karen glared at him like she couldn't believe he was here to negotiate instead of bulldozing me into submission. I reviewed the new draft. It was better, but not nearly enough. "You want to restore access without rent?" I asked. "This land isn't a charity. I'm willing to provide water, but not for free, especially after the cops, and certainly after the accusations." Karen slammed her clipboard down on her car hood. "This is extortion." "No," I said, calm as ever. "This is a consequence." She looked like she might explode. Then Melissa stepped out, holding something that made Karen's face go completely white, a water quality report. What they didn't know yet was that HOA pipes had another, much bigger problem. Melissa laid the folder flat on the tailgate of my truck. Karen leaned in reluctantly, Attorney Halpern peering over her shoulder. The top sheet was a certified lab report with official state water quality seals. Melissa tapped the bold red section with a perfectly timed smirk. "We ran a test on the water flowing back into the HOA supply line. Heavy levels of calcium, rust, and trace contaminants from old piping. Your side hasn't been maintained in years." Karen's lips moved, but no words came out. Halpern adjusted his tie. "This could become a liability issue." Melissa nodded. "That's putting it mildly. If someone gets sick or files a claim, it will go public. And who do you think the HOA members will blame when they find out the water they've been using comes from land you don't even lease anymore?" I leaned in. "And remember, you called the cops over a few fish." Karen blinked rapidly, posture shrinking slightly. She had built her power on intimidation, fines, gossip, and bureaucracy. For the first time, she realized she was losing both legally and logically. Halpern broke the silence. "What terms are you proposing?" I didn't even glance at Karen. "A 10-year lease, a monthly payment based on consumption, and a signed letter of apology retracting the violation report you filed with the sheriff's department." Karen hissed. "Never." Melissa tilted a second report toward them. Page 3 noted potential mold contamination in the holding tanks if pressure remained low for another 3 days. She smiled sweetly. "But we can hold firm if you'd prefer." Karen stood frozen. Then quietly she muttered, "Fine." It took 2 days to finalize the agreement. By Monday morning, the HOA had officially agreed to lease water from me at triple the previous arrangement. The apology letter arrived later, signed and sealed, with not a single Karenism in sight. That evening, I watched the tilapia jump in the pond and heard the distant hum of HOA sprinklers coming back to life. Melissa walked over and handed me a glass of iced tea. "You know," she said, "when we moved here, I didn't expect a water war." I smirked. I didn't expect to win it by moving fish. She laughed. Think Karen learned her lesson? I sipped my tea, gazing across the fields. Probably not, but she knows where the pipe runs now, and that's enough. Because in a neighborhood where the HOA ruled with fines and fear, I had reminded them of something they'd forgotten. Power doesn't always come from the boardroom. Sometimes it flows straight from your land. If you enjoyed watching HOA Karen get a taste of her own dry medicine, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you think property owners should know their rights. And let me know in the comments what you would have done if Karen came for your pond.